Let's talk about the role that the SAT, or any standardized test for that matter, is going to play in the college admissions process. A lot of students are applying to colleges and universities, millions as a matter of fact, and all those students are going to have to submit a lot of information to those universities so that the university can decide whether or not the student should be admitted or not. In the class of 2018, for example, there were 2.1 million test takers for the SAT. That's how many students are applying to college and university every year. In fact, it's more than that, but that's how many took the SAT. A good number of them took the ACT as well, and some of them took both. So we know that college competition is more fierce than ever. It's just one of those things where more and more students want to go to college and university, and it's hard to tell whether or not the universities are able to keep up with that kind of influx. So every year the requirements seem to get more strict. They seem to get tougher and harder. So a score that sufficed 5 years ago may not suffice 5 years from now. So we want to make sure we understand exactly what role the standardized test plays, specifically the SAT, in the college admissions process. So let's break that down. I'm going to go through a few general categories of information for you, so you have a good idea of exactly what to expect when you go through that college admissions process. Okay. First and foremost, whenever you apply to a college or university, the first thing they're going to ask of you is your grades. It doesn't matter what anybody tells you. It doesn't matter what how many people have said. SATs are very important. This, that. Don't worry about all that. The number one thing is your grades. That's the number one thing that the universities care about. They want to know whether you got A's and B's or C's and D's. They want to know how much effort you put in every time you went to class. They want to know how much effort you put in for your homework. And all of that is summarized by several different numbers, right? There's your numeric average for each class. So whether you got an 85 or a 95 in the class. They also care about your GPA, how you did overall in your classes, and sometimes they even take into consideration like your class rank. Generally, this doesn't come into play that much, except for a few different circumstances. They also care about the strength of your curriculum, so they care that you took the best, the most challenging courses you could, and you did as best as you could in those courses. Colleges and universities understand that there is a big difference between getting a 95 in an AP physics class versus a 95 in an on-level physics class. So they understand that distinction, and you should too. So as much as possible, try to take the best, the most challenging courses you can and do the best you can in those courses. That's the idea. The problem that you run into and that most universities run into with this category is that it's very difficult to compare two students from two completely separate systems against one another on a level playing field. So take, for example, Jonathan, who attends high school in Atlanta, and he got a 95 on his, let's say you just pick a school in Atlanta. Let's say we pick, North Gwinnett High School. Let's say he got a 95 in his AP physics class. And we have to compare him against Jason, who scored a 95 in his AP physics class in Mountain Vista High School in California. I don't even know if that's a real school, but we'll just use that for a reference. So now you got two students in AP physics who got a 95 in their classes. Can we, based on that information alone, tell who the better student is in physics? Chances are we probably can't, because we don't know what the two systems were like. Maybe this system had a tougher teacher. Maybe one student had a tougher grading system. Maybe one county expected more of their students. Maybe one teacher was just very tough on their students. So the grades were low, but they understood a lot more. And a lot of times it's very difficult to figure out exactly what's going on in these cases. So the grades themselves are not alone. A 4.0 in one school may not necessarily be a 4.0 in another school or in another system. There's too many variables to consider here. So what colleges and universities like doing is leveling out the playing field completely. They want to know how that student performs on a standard test. And the idea of a standardized test is very straightforward. You take all the students that want to apply to a particular institution, in this case a college or university, and you put them all in the same room at the same time, give them the same set of questions, the same amount of time to complete those questions, and you use the same standard method for grading. Hence the name, standardized tests. And the idea is, or the general theory that everyone subscribes to, is that the stronger academic student will come out on top on these standardized tests. Is it always true? No. Is it generally true? Yes. The students that take the most challenging courses that are available to them and do the best they can in those courses tend to score higher on average on these standardized tests. There are exceptions to this rule. There are many students who take the most challenging courses but don't do well on these standardized tests. It happens. But the general rule is actually pretty true. A lot of students that take the challenging courses and do well in those courses and are strong academically tend to perform better on these standardized tests. And the standardized tests can be anything. It doesn't just have to be the SAT or ACT. You guys are used to taking the standardized tests since elementary school. You might have taken like the ITBS test or the CRCT. In high school, you're looking at the SAT and ACT. When you get to college and university, when you apply to grad school programs, you're looking at the GRE, the GMAT, the MCAT, the LSAT, the OMGs, the LOLs. Like, it's all those, the acronym soup of exams that you come up with, and they all serve a very specific purpose. It basically compares you to another student in another location on a completely level playing field. You take out all the variability, or at least most of the variability, as much as you can. So using your grades and your standardized test scores, they can create a pretty strong predictor of whether or not you would be successful at that institution for that university. So you want to make sure you keep that in mind. Item number 3 that universities request from you is your extracurricular activities. They want to know, after your 8 hours in school were done, what did you do? Did you just go home and take a nap and watch TV? Or did you participate in something you had a passion for? Did you really strive for something? Did you have, did you really enjoy an activity, or did you really go for something? And the category in here doesn't really make a big difference. It could be something athletic. It could be a club that you join. It could be like the math team or the science team or the glee club. It could also be volunteering or service. If you join 4-H or Beta Club or any other society that or club that allows you to volunteer or serve others in that capacity. And they also want to know if you won any awards for it. It's great if you did. You don't have to, of course, but it always looks good if you get recognized for something. So if you won some kind of an award at, for the state championship or the regional championship or even a school championship, it looks great. If you won a medal or something, looks fantastic. If you served some number of hours, so if you completed, say, 500 hours of voluntary service in a given year, that looks really good on a college application. They care about that. Universities want well-rounded students. They want students that are not only good academically, not only do well on the standardized tests, but that they have a passion for something. They have an interest in something. It could be anything. It could be Science Olympiad. You could have gotten 3rd place at the state tournament or the regional tournament or even your county tournament. It doesn't matter. They just want to know that a few different things. One, did you show conviction? Did you really go for it? Were you really passionate about it? Did you really want to go for it? You tried your best. You did everything you could. You gave it your all. They also want to see persistence or perseverance in this case. Is it, did you just bounce around club to club every year, or did you, stick with like 2 or 3 clubs or activities throughout your entire high school career? So they like to see that kind of progression. They like to see that, in 9th grade you joined, 10th grade you learned a lot and you competed but you didn't win. 11th grade you might have, gotten to the county level, and then 12th grade you may have won some kind of an award or championship or a medal at the state level or something like that. So they like to see that. They also like to see leadership, right? A lot of times in these activities, with service activities especially, a lot of times you can organize the event yourself. So universities care about these kinds of things because they want well-rounded students. They want to know that the student that they're admitting is going to be able to succeed and fit into their institution as well. A good rule of thumb to use in a case like this for activities and extracurriculars, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. A lot of times students focus on 1, maybe 2 activities and they really go for it. Other times students are kind of spread out. They have, multiple interests, and they may not have, been sky high in any one of them, but they are able to talk about it quite a bit. They were so involved in this process that, they were thoroughly involved in like 4 or 5 different activities. And it really depends on you as a student. A good rule of thumb I use to give students is you should be engaged enough in an activity or in a set of activities that after you graduate from high school, the school or the club or the activity feels your absence. There's some kind of void left there by you. So if you were the president of the debate team, for example, do such a good job that once you graduate, there's like a hole in that debate team. They have to fill that void that you left because you are now in college or university. So that's a great rule of thumb to use. They're also going to ask you for some kind of a personal statement. Not all universities do, but a lot of them do. A personal statement is like an essay or short answer. They'll ask you some kind of open-ended question, and you'll be expected to give an answer. Sometimes it's like 2 pages, sometimes it's 1,000 words, sometimes it's 300 words. It really depends on the institution. Generally, short answer is less than or equal to 500 words. An essay is usually 1,000 words plus. That's usually the category we're looking at. And they can ask you anything. I've seen universities ask all kinds of questions. I've seen a question like, a 1,000-word essay on how you feel about Thursday. That's it. You just have to come up with 1,000 words and describe how you feel about Thursday, the day Thursday. And a lot of students, just come up with very creative things. Other times it's something even more ridiculous. I've seen an essay where they ask something like, NASA has selected you to save humanity from an approaching asteroid, and what do you do at that point? Like, you have 1,000 or 2,000 words or 2 pages to describe the process that you would use to save mankind in a case like this. And of course, they're not expecting you to solve mankind's problem of dealing with asteroids. We have professionals for that. But what they want to know is how you structure your thoughts. They usually want to get inside your head and understand, okay, how does this student reason? How does this student organize his thoughts? How do they put them on paper? Do they organize them well? Are they able to create some kind of a narrative that takes the reader step by step by step in understanding their thought process? They want to know. They want to get inside your head. That's the idea. And you'll notice that all 4 of these boxes, all 4 of these categories tells the university something very specific about you as a candidate for their institution, right? They basically are asking 2 questions, when you apply to that college or university. One, is this student going to succeed at our institution? And 2, is he or she going to make us look good when they do so? If the answer to those 2 questions is yes, you'll be admitted. If the answer is a big yes, you'll be admitted and offered a scholarship. But if the answer to one or more of those questions is a maybe, not really, no, then there's a number of different things that can happen. It can be, you can be rejected, you can be deferred, you can be waitlisted, you can be denied, you can be conditionally accepted. There's a number of things that can happen in a case like this. And of course, the last category is the other category. And this includes like your letters of recommendation, an interview that the school may conduct with its student leadership or teaching leadership. Sometimes the school will ask you to submit a portfolio of the work that you've done, whether it's volunteering or extracurriculars. It could even involve work experience. So if you've worked at a position, if you've held a job somewhere, they may ask you to submit that. There's a number of different categories. Schools can ask for whatever they want. They can ask you for any information that they feel is pertinent in making that decision of whether or not you should be admitted to that university. So the next obvious question is, okay, we saw the 5 boxes of things that are important. Which of these boxes is better than the other, right? Which of these boxes is more important and less important? Luckily, you don't have to take my word for it. Every 2 to 3 years, the National Association of College Admissions Counselors does a nationwide poll. And they ask their college admissions counselors, what do you consider important when it comes to admitting a student into a university? So this information is readily available online. You could just type in NACAC Admissions Trends Survey or the State of College Admissions Report, and is readily available. It's usually the first or second thing that shows up on Google. But take a look at the chart over here. The very first thing that they look at, that these admissions counselors put the most emphasis on, is grades in all your courses. They basically care about how well you did in your classes. Did you get A's and B's, or did you get C's and D's? They care about that. Then they care about grades in your college prep courses. And college prep courses are generally considered like your core classes, so your math, sciences, social studies, and language arts. They want to know how you did in those specific classes, whereas other classes may include elective classes or like your band or orchestra or chorus, something like that. So they really care. And it could be anything. Electives can be anything, like underwater basket weaving. Item number 3, if you take a look at it, is the standardized test scores, SAT or ACT, right? That's where it comes into play. A lot of times AP exams are included in there as well, but that's item number 3 on that list, so we can say it's pretty important. And then strength of curriculum is, of course, your AP, honors, gifted, tag. There's a number of different classifications that universities use for something like this. But they care that not only did you take underwater basket weaving as a class, but they also care that you took AP level underwater basket weaving as a class. So it matters. Universities care that you really went for it. And then after that, you'll see that it's the essay. Another interesting thing to note is that the work experience is all the way at the very bottom. So a lot of universities, it looks like, don't really care much for your work experience. So if you had to choose between working at Zaxby's versus participating in a volunteering activity after school, the choice is pretty clear here, right? Unless you absolutely need to work at Zaxby's or you have a real passion for working there, I think it makes most sense to focus on things that would put yourself in a much better position for college or university. And that's the question you need to start answering at this point. What can I do to put myself in the best possible position to get to whatever college or university I want to get to? That's the idea. That's the question you have to start thinking about now. It doesn't matter whether you're in 9th grade or 10th grade or 11th grade or 12th grade. What can you do starting now to put yourself in the best possible position to get to wherever you need to go?